Will electronics of the future one day simply be 3D printed? And if so, what are they made of? And what could we do with them? And what does the Internet of Things have to do with all of that? It's questions like these that I'll be tackling today with today's guest, Evgeniia Gilshtein, here in our second episode of Bright Minds. Pleasure to have you here, Evgeniia.
Thanks a lot for having me.
You're a scientist at Empa's Thin Film and Photovoltaics Laboratory. And my name is Michael Hagmann. I'll be your host today in the second episode of Bright Minds. Now, for those of you who did not have a chance to tune in last time around for the very first episode, Bright Minds is a new series of videos and live streams where we will broadcast some of our bright researchers, their bold ideas, their new materials to actually enable a sustainable future. And since we are live, we invite you all out there to submit your questions during the episode in the comment field, and we will answer them at the end of the episode. Now, back to today's guest, Evgeniia. Evgeniia, when we talked about this episode beforehand to sort of prepare for the live stream, you juxtaposed electronics on one side and nature on the other side, sort of natural materials being soft, being flexible, being stretchable, being biodegradable, being sustainable, and electronics on the other hand side lacking many, if not all, of these features. Now, why would electronics of tomorrow need to have all these sort of nature or bio-inspired properties in the first place?
Yep. So it's important to mention that like science and material science for electronics was always from the nature, then beyond the nature, and then to the nature. So we are kind of moving towards being helpful at the same time for the humanity and for the nature. So when we also compare these two classes of electronics, like printed, the flexible electronics, and then these conventional electronics,
like the ones we have today,
rigid ones like phones, displays, and other things based on silicon technology, then we should think, first of all, that we shouldn't actually directly compare them between each other.
Okay.
Because one of those classes have one advantages and another one has another advantages. And maybe the advancement in the industry is not there yet for print electronics, because we always try to compete and, sort of put that print electronics performance becoming better than of this
state-of-the-art conventional.
But we should also think that, for example, the rigid electronics, it doesn't have these features, as you mentioned, like flexibility, being able to bend over the subjects or being like placed on our skin or under the skin. So this is something that we should consider. We should not compete between these two technologies, but we should benefit from both of them.
But basically, it's finding the right application for this new type of electronics where the rigid, the conventional electronics can actually not even fulfill that function.
Yeah, or even merging them together.
Okay. Oh, yeah. With all the features that were just now briefly touched upon, you would really need sort of a miracle material, a material that fulfills all these properties, all these features. What are your devices made of?
So yes, I should say that this is very challenging to fulfill all the requirements.
Can imagine.
Yes, so far I should say that maybe we can put like the ticks under the names sort of printed, then flexible, transparent, or stretchable.
So you can fulfill all these.
Yeah,
okay.
Also invisible or transparent.
Okay.
But we should consider also materials that should be biodegradable or biocompatible with the nature or a human or environment.
And that one you're still working on?
That's what I'm actually now looking into. So there's an additional feature that I would like to bring in to the portfolio of all my keywords.
Sort of a multi-purpose electronic components and devices. Okay. And how do we briefly mentioned 3D printing several times now. How do you fabricate these things?
Yeah. So the most challenging thing that the materials itself are already existing, I should say. So for example, if we consider functionality of being conductive, like similar to what we have in our circuits, the wires or connectors, like conductive materials, then for example, it could be some biodegradable metals or carbon-based materials or conductive polymers. So these materials kind of exist, but the challenge is how to make them printable. So to make the ink out of these materials. And As soon as we succeed with the huge class, like a huge portfolio of these inks with various functionalities, then we can consider different printing techniques. For example, inkjet, gravure printing, contact printing methods, or contactless, when actually we are touching the substrate by our kind of stamping technique, or we are not touching the substrate, and then the drops are falling from the nozzle to the
Raindrops
substrate.
keep falling on my head.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about potential applications of this new type of electronics. One of the most striking things, well, at least to me, that was your invisible keypad. Now, let's maybe look at that. Well, looking at it is tricky because it's, as I said, invisible. Now, could you please sort of elaborate what we're seeing?
So we are seeing here the prototype of the door. Here I'm showing the flexible polymer substrate. And on top of it, we are printing the ink of the conductive material. Then after several annealing steps, the ink becomes transparent and conductive. And actually before I was like placing my hand towards that metallic joint where the foil is actually placed, you wouldn't have guessed where this keypad is located. So basically when the person who knows where it is located, because it's invisible, approaches it, and it also the person should know the access code, then you can access the door, because you press the conductive pads and then in the right sequence, and then it opens.
So you're actually hiding the keypad for people who should not be allowed access to.
I was once asked, how would you tackle the problem if someone is standing behind and watching another person opening it? I couldn't find the answer because it was too advanced, but
Okay, so that's the application field here. What other applications do you have in mind? In the introduction, I mentioned the Internet of Things. How would that fit in?
So I would say that for this electronics, if we consider the success scenario and we have all these features that I mentioned, like being flexible or stretchable. So here, for example, the stretchable polymer substrate, it's actually just like elastic. Just an example of the polymer, but ideally we would like to have like our circuit or device or sensor at least be placed on top of it. So for example,
printing technologies.
So then if we consider this, and if we have this film also biodegradable, then I would envision the applications where we have to place some electronic component, but then we leave it there without taking
sort of
care.
Out there in the environment, for example.
For example, without taking care who will come to put it off or take it out and so on.
To recollect it again.
And here comes maybe like two areas where I see this not touching approach would be beneficial, either for wearables. For example, if we place this thing on our skin and then we monitor the wound after the surgery,
sort of as a biosensor in a way.
Or for the healing or for something else on our skin, then we don't have to, peel it off to damage the skin again.
I see.
Then we can also put it inside our body, for example, for tracking different stages of the surgery, how it went and so on. Because then if you place something inside your body, you would have to again take it out, right? That's human related, I would say, wearable technology. And another thing is environment. For example, if you are considering forests or some rural areas where it's really hard to get to that areas, then you would deploy some gliders or sensors in the environment, and then you don't care if that would stay there.
Like the ones we talked about, Mirko, in the last episode.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Now, coming back to your CV, to your career, you studied nanoelectronics, and then you did your PhD in material science. Why that topic? What sort of lured you into being a physicist, sort of in the big scheme of things, and material scientist?
Yeah, so I think I discovered that I like physics itself at the age of maybe 14 or 15, maybe like that. So I already knew that I will be a physicist. And then when I started my university, we had just a broad range of different experimental laboratories there, starting from laser technology to bioengineering. But then I also realized that I'm an experimentalist immediately. So then basically what fascinated me at the first sign is that you are standing in front of the machine, you are doing some unknown things like pressing the buttons, when you are like 18 years old or so. And then after that, you are going to the microscope and you are seeing that structures that you just grow in an invisible way.
Yeah.
And they are tiny. They are like 5 nanometers, 10 nanometers. And then you see that you produce that by your own.
Yeah.
And this tiny thing can be used for something like a device or so. That was fascinating for me.
It's also the beauty of science. Once you look at these EM or whatever microscopy pictures, the microscopic world is really, beautiful dimension.
Because you cannot see it.
Exactly, exactly. You're here at Empa since about 5 years now. So what has been your highlight here in your career?
So that was really like fruitful time here at Empa, and maybe like knowledge-wise for me, it was very helpful and very important to develop myself as a like independent scientist, because I started here as a postdoc. So I knew I get to know all these cutting-edge devices and equipment from at Empa, for which you have unlimited access, and you can just come and measure or synthesize the materials.
It's like a toy park.
Yes. So let's do the stuff and let's do the science. Personally wise, I was able to travel to so many places for the conferences, for the research stays even. So I recently made my 9-year-old dream to be in Japan, to join the laboratory of the professor who was kind of my guru, starting from the PhD.
Wow. Okay.
And it's also thanks to Empa and thanks to my supervisor here, also Professor Dr. Jaroslav Romaniuk.
Okay.
Because he was always encouraging me and keeping me for such a long time here at Empa.
Okay, so you finally met your hero, if you wish. Okay, wonderful. So, where there is light, there is also shadow. Maybe one of your failures where things didn't really go as planned?
Yeah. When I was thinking about that, I realized that maybe experimentally wise, there was not many failures, because maybe PhD is the time when you can do failures.
But later on you say you shouldn't do any.
Yeah. So you are maybe more wisely approaching the experiment planning and so on.
More
and
experience and so forth.
Optimize things. That's why maybe the biggest failure, recent one, was not being accepted for this starting grant that I didn't want. So
highly competitive. Yes. Yeah. Well, it's I can understand. So how do you motivate yourself? Now you're fallen or you're stumbled? You didn't really get it. How do you motivate yourself to get up again and sort of keep going?
So in the beginning, I took it like personal, maybe because everyone is like getting it like that. Yeah. But then I realized that, yes, it's a competitive one. And maybe and also I'm aware that in science, everything is so competitive. But at the same time, also very exciting. So I also know that science and experimental things, being experimentalist, is something that I can do the best, and maybe the only thing in life at its best.
Wonderful.
That's why I think I will just pursue. And if that opportunity was not accepted, then I would have a better one.
There's another door opening.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Now let's maybe look into the future. Where do you see your field, printed electronics, in say 5 to 10 years from now?
Yeah, I would say that now maybe the industry will be accepting changing the manufacturing facilities towards this printed infrastructure. So I think printed electronics will be evolving more and more in the applications. And then it will be merging with the conventional electronics. So it will be hybrid electronics, in my opinion. So that the chips and all the microcontroller units will remain the same, because they are very powerful and they can monitor and transmit the data and collect the data. But all the functional things that will be attached to the subjects, that will be made of printed electronics. Well, so I see the merge of these two
very
things.
Versatile field, very promising field. Now, that was it from my side. A lot of questions. Now let's look at some of the questions from you guys out there, actually. I have one from Peter Neustein. What was the biggest change in the field of printed electronics when they got foldable and stretchable back in 2008?
Yeah, I think the whole printed electronics started in 2000.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that. Okay.
Yeah, so now it's starting to be like from lab to fab or something like this, transition stage. So I think the main challenge that people were facing is to develop materials that would withstand all these bending cycles and stretching cycles. So, for example, the material will remain functional when you bend it so many times and you don't break it.
Okay.
So people start to think about strategies, how to make rigid and brittle material stretchable.
Okay.
For example, to bend it in a serpentine way so that you can, like a spring thing.
Exactly. You can expand it.
Or you can develop an intrinsically stretchable material that would be stretchable by themselves. So.
Okay. Another one from Alessia Rieder. What do you think will be the biggest impact when printed electronics get even more flexible? I don't know if that's possible, but and biodegradable, the ones we sort of touched upon briefly.
I think that would really help to develop the wearables and the healthcare tech even more. And in the advanced agricultural technology, that would be also very very helpful. So for example, films can be flexible in a way, like in a still rigid way, but also the films can be flexible in a very conformable way. So it's still flexible, it's not stretchable, but it is much more conformable in a way.
Than the other one, than the other one. I see. Another one by Jörg Clemens. Well, a good one actually. Scalability and mass production. These are always, when we talk about materials and devices, lab to fab, this is sort of like the big stepping stone. Production are a big challenge. Does your technique offer a solution to these issues?
So I think if we talk about like biodegradable materials, then they are very sensitive to temperature, humidity, all these factors. And then during the production, one should consider these things. But in general, printed electronics is very like promising in terms of being scalable, because you can print a lot of structures, just like, for example, 2 meters per second or so. So the scales of production are quite fast.
Okay, so it's the velocity of the printer that actually, That was it. We're approaching the end of the episode. Time flies when you're having fun. Thank you very much, for tuning in this time. And of course, thank you very much, Evgeniia, for being with me here today. It was a pleasure. I hope you will be joining us again next time around. That will be our December, our Christmas edition. We'll put the exact date on our webpage and our social media channels. And my next guest will be, you'll see him right there, Abdesalam Aribia, and he's working on a better battery of the future, with which he wants to revolutionize the battery market. And he just founded a startup company to do just that. So it'll be my pleasure to talk to Abi about it, and hope you tune in again next time. Have a good time.